It feels really good to be back today. Excuse any noise you hear in the background. Disclaimer up front. I'm making myself some eggs as I'm talking. I am a multitasker by nature. I grew up with that. And so on my podcast, in my space, we do life together. Real life things, right? And so human means doing human things. And it's not a performance. It is a real life situation. Because as soon as I'm done talking, real life says, I'm going to be eating something, okay? So if you haven't already, grab your coffee cup or grab your favorite drink. Hopefully it's one that gets you going in the right energy direction. And grab a paper and a pen. You might want to grab your journal or just listen and then go back and re-listen, because today I'm going to give you some powerful reclamation tips going from performance to reclaiming identity. I'm going to be sharing a powerful story with you, actually a few powerful stories. And as you're listening, if you can close your eyes and follow along. Or you can just, if you're driving, that's probably not the best thing, right? Or if you're, cooking and chopping up vegetables of any kind, you won't want to close your eyes. So put your hand on your heart and come with an open heart and open mind. And also bring people to this podcast. Yes, just like yourself. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your coworkers. Cool story. I have a coworker friend, right? We built a phenomenal connection over the phone because of the department that I work in. I have never met this person in person, but we built a phenomenal connection over the phone. And all I did one day, nonchalantly, was just tell her that. So we were talking about Facebook and how I do not friend request coworkers anymore on my social media, because I had a really bad experience with a coworker that turned bully and created a very unsafe, hostile environment, and was stalking my social media and bringing my coworkers involved, and I had no idea this was going on behind the scenes until I started getting told. I wasn't asking or fishing for the information, but thankfully, the truth always comes out, right? When we pray, when we ask, we are going to get. And so that's when I just went to town and I was like, God, have your way. Reveal all truth. And he did. And I'm like, oh, okay. So be prepared for what you ask for. Also, I knew that I did not deserve to be treated disrespectfully or bullied by anyone ever in my life. And I've been bullied a lot in my life. I especially have been bullied a lot by people who did not like it when I started reclaiming myself, or I kept trying to step into my identity and who I am. And it was hard because I grew up in foster care my whole life, from before I was 1 year old up until after I graduated high school. And let me tell you something. My identity got lost behind having to put on masks of performance and the doing, performing to be accepted, performance to be safe, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I had to put on a show just to look the part, look capable, look smart, and I was miserable. I suffered. It wasn't until 4 years ago when someone lovingly looked me in the face, and my coach, my mentor at the time, I had just gotten into my first ever mastermind, and I paid some big dollars. Okay, I paid a lot of money to be there. So you better believe I was going to show up ready, willing to do the work. And I've been doing the work. It has been a very, very hard, grueling process that I have gone through. What I'm about to share with you today are some of the tools that I am going to give to you for what's called your war chest, your tool chest, so that you don't have to figure this out on your own. One of the biggest problems I see people doing is trying to go it alone. There's nothing to be proud of when we are lone wolfing it, period. There's none. We actually go farther and faster in a group than we do by ourselves. You can think of people that had groups of people around them, and they're one of the top people that's talked about in the world, right? We can think of a few people, Jesus, right, and his 12 disciples. We can think of Martin Luther King Jr. We think of who else out there? Bill Gates, right, and had a team of people. Steve Jobs. I'm not a big fan of Mr. Gates himself, but this is not about politics. I'm only sharing people for context purposes and examples, and that's it. And today I was thinking about identity and reclamation and my story about foster care, and I am in a pivot and transition in my life where I started out talking about resumes and how to excel in your career, and I have a program called Career Reclamation Blueprint. I've got, things in there that give people the reframe to let go of performance when they go to get a job, when they go for the interview, right? On doing the resume, how to redo the resume, how to use prompts with ChatGPT and AI to create your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And it's pretty badass and amazing. Excuse me, and there's other things in it, but I realized that that's great and all. However, and health and wellness, and I remember coaching people with exercise, nutrition, menus, grocery shopping, what to eat to get your digestion on track and all that stuff, and to increase your energy. And so I've done all that. And then each time, though, I realize that whenever people have come to me, it has nothing to do with how much they're doing, but it has everything to do with them finding themselves beneath all the to-do lists and the overwhelm, and they're burned out. They're burned out AF because they lost themselves. They're buried behind the performance. And so that's my message to the world. And it's something that I have been freed from. And it's the one area in my life that I'm qualified to talk about. I have authority. And same goes for you. The same areas that you have been freed from are the very areas you're qualified in, that you have authority to speak in and lead in. Nobody else can do it the same way that you can. I don't care how many people sound the same. I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care how much education you have. I don't care. Your story is your story. So back to the story with my coworker friend. So my podcast. So all I did was tell my coworker, I was like, we were talking about the Facebook thing, and I told her I don't friend coworkers anymore on social media. And I said, but the only reason why I have social media is because of what I do behind the scenes. So then, of course, she was like, well, hey, what do you do? And I said, oh, I also have a podcast and all this stuff. And I was just telling her because we were having a nonchalant conversation. Well, little did I know that this person was looking me up while she was talking to me on the phone. And she goes, I found you. And she has been one of my biggest supporters ever since. Now, I know she's not the only one downloading my podcast. I went to look at my podcast numbers today, and I'm pretty proud of myself because like a few weeks ago, it was at 166 or 169 downloads, right? Today, it's at 199. That means people are listening to my voice. That means my story is resonating. That means people's lives, they're getting what they desire. They want the outcome of confidence and the reclamation, reclaiming their identity, reclaiming their energy and their life, reclaiming their voice, remembering who they are without the mask, without the performance, coming back home to themselves. They want the freedom to let go of saying yes to everything that burns them out so that they can say yes to the things that light them up. They're done. They're saying no to all those things that burn them out. All the reasons why they're saying yes, to look capable, to look smart, to play the part, to look great. People do this every day. They do it in their job, parenting, with friends, online. But behind the scenes, these people are miserable. People are stuck in a cage and they're asking themselves, how do I break free from this roller coaster of performance? I once had a client that for 60 minutes on our first ever Zoom call, all I saw was the top of her head. And then she jumped in a container in an app called Voxer with me for 3 whole days. By the end of the 3rd day, it was a voice-led container. I was the hype girl of the container. She got exactly what she paid for and came for. But by the end of the 3rd day, she had more confidence. She was beginning to know who she is, like she was uncovering herself. She remembered her voice. She remembered why she's doing what she's doing. She started setting boundaries. She started sticking up for herself and standing up for herself. She started reclaiming the identity in her name, in who she is. She was literally finding herself again, outside of all of what people have told her, outside of the normal routine, day-to-day stuff. She was finding herself again. The power of performance is like when you go to a play, you see someone perform and then it's done. We have a lot of good actors in the world that not only do we see them on the big screen, but also regular people also are actors. We see a lot of people that perform and look the part, and underneath they're crumbling inside. And they're just waiting, dying inside. They're dying and waiting for somebody to see them as they are and say, hey, you don't have to be like that with me anymore. You can be who you are. And who are you? Tell me about yourself. What's your background? What's your story? But a lot of us, we don't know that people are suffering inside until it's too late. And it's unfortunate when that happens. And I say that because it's happened to me in my own life. You see people and they look the part, right? They look great. You don't know that they're suffering until they're no longer with us on the planet, in the world. And it's like, man, how did I miss that? How did I not make the time to see what that person was going through? How would I have known, right? And so we might blame ourselves, but in all honesty, there's nobody to blame. You can't even blame the person because it's like they probably didn't even know why they couldn't show up without performing. So I was going to go to the gym today, but my body is having a nervous system physiological response. And I have been healing my nervous system. It has been dysregulated from being in performance mode my whole life, from being in a hypervigilant state, from being on high alert. And my nervous system has been dysregulated up until very recently. And let me tell you something, for 3 years, I had been on a health journey to find out the culprit, find out why, I got a heart diagnosis and why I'm having all of these symptoms that aren't really showing up for doctors to help me, but they're showing up as physiological symptoms, responses. And lately, I have been feeling much safer to rest and to just be. And I have a feeling that after I eat, I'm going to be able to go to the gym. But I just had this message of today as I was looking at my podcast and I was looking at where I'm at in my life and how I'm pivoting and how I'm reclaiming my identity and who I truly am so I can show up powerfully, especially where it matters. And I realized, oh my gosh, Tiffany, you have been a little distracted with where you're showing up because you're trying to fit in over here, but you're missing what's going on over here. So I don't care how small I've started off with my podcast. Ducks alarm was cutting me off. Then I went on to the Apple Podcasts, and now I'm on every podcast platform out there. And I share that because I performed so much in my life that I lost who I was, that I was not myself. I didn't even know who I was. I was putting on a show for the whole world when I first started. November 1st, 2014, I'll never forget, was my very first video. My background actually starts when I was giving edification words at church when I was on the worship team. Yeah, I went to church. I don't do church anymore, but it doesn't mean I hate God or hate people, okay? It's just my preference. I love God. I have a relationship. I'm not here to shove him down anyone's throat. Yes, I will talk about him because without him, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. It's been an act of faith, terrifyingly, for me to step out and speak my truth. Because I had an identity that my voice sucked. I had an identity that nobody wanted to listen to my voice. So I started sounding like other people that were that are well known in the world. Because I thought to myself, oh, well, since my voice isn't important and since it gets ignored and squelched and squashed, people don't listen, I'm going to sound like so-and-so so that people will hear me. So I was forcing myself to be heard because I identified with that I was less than and unworthy to be heard. Now my true voice is exactly who you're listening to today. You know, every time I get on to my podcast, I feel this fire in my belly, like it's a natural, I feel natural. I feel at home. I feel good. And it's not because you can't see my face, but it's just, I feel more at home speaking. So our gifts that are given to us get nurtured, right? I've gone through a very grueling process to get healing. I have also paid a lot of money to be able to hire people that can help me as I acclimate through my journey, my healing journey. You know, excuse the noise. Growing up in foster care, though, I'm telling you, it stole my identity. Foster care was meant to put me in the ground. It was meant to bury me. But I don't know how I did it. I defied every odd and every statistic placed on me and the foster care society, if you will, system. The statistics of foster kids are you either end up suicidal, homeless, on drugs, addicted to alcohol, or you get trafficked. Now, truth statements, okay, you can do your own research. This is not what this podcast is, but I know that foster care, there are certain foster care agencies which are the number one trafficking sources. And so there are a lot of kids that get trafficked in there. There's things that happen in the foster care system. There's exploitation for money. More money gets dished out every time. The more homes a kid gets put in, the more group homes a kid gets put in. And some foster parents are not even equipped to do foster care, but they do it for the money. I know because that was me. Money was withheld. I was exploited for money. I was not trafficked for sex or anything else, thank goodness. And it's very disgusting. If I were to say the name of the agency that is the #1 trafficking hub, you would be shocked. And you would probably go there and say, you guys, yeah, more voices need to rise up. That's all I'll say. More people need to come forward and stop seeing, not everybody sees foster kids as problem kids, but the majority of things. You want to know some of the things that I have been told, which is one reason why I lost who I was. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know that I was biracial until I was 13. Okay? I grew up in an all-white, almost adoptive home, very abusive, for the first 10 years of my life. My birth father was black, and my birth mom was white. I was forced to have a relationship with our birth mom. She wouldn't leave us alone, very unstable. She didn't know a lot of things, didn't get the healing that she deserved or needed. We were forced to have a relationship with her, but it wasn't the best thing at all. And so I didn't know my identity as a biracial person. And I didn't realize I was biracial until I was 13 when I moved into my first all-black foster home. And that's where my identity, when people have an identity skewing, what's that called? Identity crisis. I had one, but it was because I didn't know I was biracial. I've had every hairstyle under the sun I could think of being biracial because I didn't know who I was. And then when I would try to step into who I am, people would come along and then push me back into the cave and box that they so happily thought I fit in. So I didn't know how to be. I didn't know who to be. Words have been spoken to me as, oh, you don't sound black. You don't sound like you're in foster care. Well, number one, black doesn't have a sound, okay? Number two, the sound of foster care isn't what you think it is. And so that was ignorant statements. I forget what I compared it to. It's almost like I have also been called the N-word. I have a few times by people, all because they were ignorant and they got angry at me. So yeah, got called the N-word. And so I realize that word is foul. It's disgusting. I won't use it. And when I hear people use it in a very slang manner, I'm like, stop it. You sound ignorant. You do. Just because I grew up in an environment where I speak the way that I do doesn't mean I'm not any less black or any less white or any less biracial. It's just how I sound. Everyone has their own sound, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I saw this video last night of the most beautiful black women. Their skin was like a golden, dark, had a beautiful, beautiful glow. And I'm talking like really dark, but it was so beautiful. And I'm like, man, if I was in their space and I walked past them, I would look at them and I would tell them, oh my gosh, you're gorgeous. Just the skin color and it's beautiful. It just is. I see things as beautiful, not trash. What's interesting, though, is that I identified with trash. I did, because that's how I was treated. I had to live out of trash bags. I had to live out of literal cardboard boxes that looked like dressers. Cardboard. And I carried that around with me pretty much my whole life, my whole foster care. Yes, I lived out of duffel bags. Lived out of Rubbermaid totes. Or just actually the cardboard boxes with the lids. I think you could get different designs. So I identified with some of that. But when I started going through a reclamation to restore my identity, to find out who I am, I was shocked at what I saw. I was shocked at what I found. I was shocked that my voice is actually quite beautiful and amazing the way it is. And I was shocked that people listen, even in a whisper. People listen to me. They are captivated when I start speaking, and I have the receipts, I have the track record to prove it. Started at church when like I said, I shared those messages at church, edification words. I was given permission. I was trusted. And the words I gave weren't mine. I didn't come up with them on my own. They were stated with power and force, and they were about change and not just about Christian stuff, not just about just follow God and he's just going to blah. No, it's about leaving our junk trunk behind, not carrying that with us, letting go, not letting that become our identity. It's been my message. And I didn't realize it though. Why? Because I didn't know who I was. But people have been listening to my story even in high school when I would share my foster care story. Then I would have to endure ridiculous, ignorant comments. Well, you don't sound like you're in foster care. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I can tell you what it sounds like, but you'll label me as rebellious, disrespectful, or problematic, which I was, right? That's what I was labeled as. So I picked up the identity. But the reclamation that I went through caused me to understand that rebellious isn't terrible. It's actually a beautiful word. There is actually a beautiful thing to being rebellious. Rebellious, I'm going to speak up and I'm going to speak the truth, whether people like to hear it or not. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to speak truthfully to my clients, not at them, but speak the truth while I hold up a mirror and say, hey, one thing that I do respectfully is when I hear people say the same thing and I keep hearing it, it's something I can pick up very quickly on a whim. And if I hear it more than once and it's something that obviously needs to be reworded, reformed, restated, whatever, I lovingly tell them, I'm like, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but I keep hearing you say this. And have you thought about saying it this way? Where is that coming from? And it gets them to stop and think. And then there's a reframe. And then there's a reclamation of their identity and who they are. And that whatever it is they're saying, they stop speaking that way and they start speaking with power the way that they were designed to. So that's what a reclamation does. It brings us back to ourselves. It turns the mirror from outward to inward, and we see, the ending of Beauty and the Beast? We've all seen it, right? If you haven't, go watch it. I'm sorry, I'm about to ruin it for you, though, if you haven't seen it, right? Or even throughout the movie. It's throughout the movie, not the ending. Beast has this magic mirror, right? And he's able to see outside and like the village and stuff. But something that the Beast doesn't like seeing is himself in the mirror, because it reminds him of who he's really not. He turned into the Beast because of how he acted, right? He identified, hooked up with alongside the identity that he acted like a beast, because inside he didn't shift things. So he got turned into how he was acting. But he wasn't a beast. And so he no longer identified with that. And then we see how things that happen start shifting how he sees himself and others. And then we see a whole different side. And that's what happens when we start walking through our own reclamation. We're able to look at ourselves and say, oh, what I believed was once ugly is actually beautiful. Oh my gosh, what I believed about myself is, oh, I'm not this. I'm not fat. I'm not disgusting. I'm beautiful. My skin color's amazing. My hair, oh my gosh. Hair, by the way, is part of our identity. Yes, it is. Have you noticed when people go through a big change, they usually either start with the hair, or leave their hair for last. Just pay attention to how people's hair changes when they start going through a reclamation and a change. It's just what happens. It's happened to me, and I see it happening to my beautiful friends and peers as well. The hair changes. It's very cool when people change their hairstyle, because it's like, yes, you're finding out who you are versus performing for what we think people want. And so that concludes today's message. Thank you so much for listening. I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to these podcasts. And if this is your first time being here, I want to say thank you and welcome. I invite you to come back and listen. There's a ton of more content on my podcasts. And so, also, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to ask questions if you can. Post any questions. Or also feel free to message me and let me know what stood out to you the most in today's podcast.